The rust-colored dust of Nova Primaris swirled against the reinforced windows of the descent shuttle as Dr. Kira Patel watched her new home materialize through the toxic atmosphere. The mining planet's surface was a wasteland of crimson rocks and sharp crystalline formations that caught the dim light of the distant sun. This desolate world would be her laboratory for the next 5 years. Final approach to Helios Base Alpha, the pilot announced through the intercom. Please secure all belongings. Kira checked her datapad one last time, reviewing the contract that had brought her halfway across the galaxy. Helios Corporation needed the best genetic engineer they could find, and her reputation for pushing boundaries in human enhancement had caught their attention. The salary they offered would have been enough to fund her own research facility back on Earth, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the opportunity to create something revolutionary. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud, and Kira gathered her belongings. As the airlock cycled, she pulled on her environment suit, standard procedure for new arrivals until they adapted to the base's artificial atmosphere. The doors opened to reveal a stark white corridor where a tall man in a pristine corporate uniform waited. Dr. Patel, welcome to Nova Primaris. I'm Director Jace Reynolds. His handshake was firm, calculated. I trust your journey was comfortable. As comfortable as 2 months in cryo can be, Kira replied, studying his face. Reynolds had the polished look of someone who'd never set foot in the mines below, never gotten his hands dirty with the real work. You'll be pleased to know your lab is ready, Reynolds said as he led her through the facility. We've spared no expense. The latest in genetic sequencing equipment, neural mapping interfaces, everything you'll need to continue the work. The work. That's what they called it, engineering humans capable of surviving in the toxic mines, harvesting the precious minerals that powered humanity's expansion across the stars. Officially, they were called enhanced labor units. Unofficially, everyone called them diggers. The lab was impressive, she had to admit. Clean white surfaces stretched as far as she could see, dotted with state-of-the-art equipment that would make her former colleagues at the Geneva Institute weep with envy. But it was the back wall that drew her attention, a massive window overlooking rows of stasis tanks, each containing a floating humanoid form. Your predecessors made significant progress, Reynolds said, stepping beside her. But the survival rate is still too low. 30% of units fail within their first month of deployment. Another 40% show signs of degradation by month 3. We need better results, Dr. Patel. Kira approached one of the tanks, studying the figure inside. Male, probably based on a standard mining template, but heavily modified. Enlarged lung capacity, reinforced skeletal structure, enhanced muscle density. The genetic modifications were extensive, far beyond anything she'd seen before. What happened to the previous team, she asked, noticing Reynolds' slight hesitation. There was an incident. Laboratory accident. Very unfortunate. He straightened his jacket. Which is why we need someone of your expertise. Someone who understands the importance of safety protocols. Kira nodded, but something in his tone set off warning bells. She'd read about laboratory accidents before. They didn't usually result in an entire team being replaced. When can I access the previous team's research data? All relevant files have been transferred to your terminal, Reynolds replied smoothly. Though I should warn you, some data was corrupted in the accident. You may need to start fresh in certain areas. Convenient, Kira thought, but kept her expression neutral. I'll need to run full diagnostics on all active units. And I want to observe the mining operations firsthand. Reynolds frowned. The mines are no place for a scientist of your caliber, Dr. Patel. We have observation rooms. I need to see how they perform in their actual environment, she interrupted. It's essential for understanding what modifications are needed. A long moment passed before Reynolds nodded. I'll arrange a supervised visit. For now, get settled in. Your quarters are in Block C. Dr. Ravi Sharma, your assistant, will help you with anything you need. He gestured to a younger man who had quietly entered the lab. As Reynolds left, Kira turned to Ravi. "Show me everything. Starting with the failed units." The morgue was several levels below the main lab. The bodies were preserved in cryostorage, each bearing the marks of their failure. Some showed signs of cellular breakdown, others massive organ failure. But it was their faces that haunted Kira, frozen in expressions of agony. "They feel everything, don't they?" she asked quietly. Ravi nodded, his dark eyes troubled. "The pain suppression protocols, they're not as effective as the reports claim. But we're not supposed to talk about that." Kira touched the cold surface of a cryopod. "Well, we're going to do more than talk about it. We're going to fix it." She pulled up the genetic sequences on her datapad, already seeing possible solutions. "But first, we need to find out what they're not telling us about that accident." The real work, she realized, wasn't just about creating better workers. It was about uncovering the truth behind Helios Corporation's secrets, no matter the cost. As she stared at the rows of failed units, Kira made a silent promise to the dead. She would find a way to make this right, even if it meant burning everything down in the process. 3 months into her work at Helios Base Alpha, Kira stood before the observation window, watching Unit 247 convulse in its tank. The genetic modifications she'd implemented should have been stable, she'd run the simulations 100 times. But something was wrong. Something that didn't show up in any of her calculations. Another rejection of the enhanced respiratory system? Ravi asked, joining her at the window. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd been pulling the same long hours she had. "No, this is different." Kira pulled up the bio readings on her tablet. "Look at these neural patterns. The synaptic activity is off the charts. It's like..." She paused, frowning at the data. "It's like the brain is rewiring itself." The unit's muscles spasmed again, more violently this time. Its eyes snapped open, revealing pupils that had changed from their engineered silver to a deep, unsettling purple. Kira had seen many mutations in her career, but nothing like this. "Shut down the tank," she ordered. "We need to run a full diagnostic before." The glass cracked. "That's impossible," Ravi whispered. The tanks were designed to withstand the pressure of 10 atmospheres. Nothing inside should have been strong enough to damage them. Another crack appeared, then another. Kira slammed her hand on the emergency containment button as alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Metal shutters descended over the observation window just as the tank exploded. "Get to the security station," Kira shouted over the noise. "Lock down all the other tanks. Now." But Ravi was already running. Kira turned to the sealed window, listening to the sounds of chaos beyond. Crashes, the splash of tank fluid, and something else, something that sounded disturbingly like laughter. The security team arrived in full hazmat gear, weapons drawn. Director Reynolds wasn't far behind, his usual polished appearance somewhat disheveled. "Report," he barked at Kira. Unit 247 exhibited unexpected mutations followed by a massive increase in strength and neural activity. The containment tank was compromised, but the secondary systems activated as designed. She kept her voice steady, professional, despite the growing unease in her gut. "And the unit?" Before Kira could respond, a wet thudding sound came from the other side of the shutters. Then a voice, rough, unused, but undeniably human. "We see you." Reynolds' face went pale. "That's not possible." The vocal cords were deliberately underdeveloped. "They can't speak." "Apparently they can now," Kira said. "And that's not all they can do." She showed him the neural scans. "These patterns suggest higher cognitive function. Self-awareness. Whatever's happening in there, it's not just a physical mutation." The thudding stopped, replaced by the sound of bare feet moving across wet floor. Then silence. "Find it," Reynolds ordered the security team. Contain it. And Dr. Patel? His eyes were cold. I want to know exactly what went wrong with your modifications. These weren't my modifications, Kira replied sharply. The base genetic template was already unstable. I've been trying to tell you this for weeks. There's something in the original code, something hidden. That's enough. Reynolds cut her off. Clean this up. Fix the problem. That's what we pay you for. He turned to leave, then paused. And Dr. Patel? Don't go digging into things that don't concern you. After he left, Kira accessed her private terminal, the one she'd carefully isolated from the main network. She'd been collecting data, comparing genetic sequences, tracking patterns. The mutations weren't random. They were following a design, one that had been buried deep in the original genetic code, like a time bomb waiting to go off. What did you find? Ravi asked, returning from the security station. Evidence. Kira showed him her findings. Look at these sequences. They're not degrading, they're evolving. Someone engineered these units to change, to develop beyond their programming. The question is, who? And why? A message flashed across her screen: access to the lower labs had been restricted. Of course. Reynolds was trying to contain not just the escaped unit, but also the truth. We need to get into the secure archives, Kira said. The real ones, not the sanitized versions they gave us. The answers about what happened to the previous team are down there. I'm sure of it. Ravi glanced nervously at the security cameras. That's restricted territory. If we're caught, we'll be fired. Kira laughed bitterly. Look around, Ravi. Do you really think they let people just walk away from this place? From what they know. She gestured to the sealed window. Whatever's happening here, it's bigger than failed experiments. The corporation is playing with something they don't understand, and we're all going to pay the price if we don't stop it. That night, as Kira reviewed the security footage of Unit 247's escape, she noticed something strange. Just before the tank broke, the unit had pressed its hand against the glass. And there, for a brief moment, she could have sworn she saw it smile. In her quarters, she encrypted her findings and sent a coded message to an old contact at the Geneva Institute. If anything happened to her, someone needed to know the truth. As she prepared for bed, her tablet chimed with an incoming message. The sender was unknown, but the text made her blood run cold. We remember everything. And soon, so will they all. Somewhere in the depths of the facility, more tanks hummed with life. More units floated in their artificial wombs. And in their genetic code, hidden beneath layers of corporate manipulation, something was awakening, something that would change everything. The maintenance tunnels beneath Helios Base Alpha were a maze of rusted pipes and flickering lights. Kira checked her tablet's map again, making sure the security loop she'd programmed was still running. Above her, cameras would show empty corridors while she and Ravi made their way to the restricted archives. Someone's been down here recently, Ravi whispered, pointing to fresh boot prints in the dust. They led away from their destination, toward a section of the facility that didn't appear on any official maps. Change of plans, Kira said, following the tracks. The path took them deeper underground, past abandoned equipment and signs warning of structural instability. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. They found the door hidden behind a panel of loose pipes. No cameras, no electronic locks, just an old-fashioned mechanical system that couldn't be hacked remotely. Kira pulled out the maintenance override key she'd borrowed from the engineering department. The room beyond made her gasp. It wasn't an archive, it was a laboratory. But unlike the sterile white facilities above, this place was different. Older equipment lined the walls, and scattered papers covered the desks. Most telling were the dates on the log books, from 15 years ago, long before Helios officially began their enhancement program. They've been doing this for years, Ravi said, scanning through a stack of reports. Look at these test subjects. Hundreds of them, before the program was even approved. Kira moved to a bank of ancient monitors, their screens covered in dust. To her surprise, they powered on. Video logs began to play, showing earlier versions of the enhancement procedures. They were crude, brutal, test subjects screaming as their bodies were transformed. "Wait," she said, freezing one frame. "That scientist. I know her." The woman on screen was Dr. Isabel Nash, a pioneer in genetic engineering who had vanished years ago. She was developing protocols for conscious evolution, ways to let enhanced humans control their own genetic structure. Her work was deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable. "And now we know where she went," Ravi said grimly. "But why would Helios want that kind of technology? They need workers, not, whatever this is." A noise from the corridor made them both freeze. Footsteps, getting closer. They quickly powered down the equipment and hid behind a row of storage tanks. The door creaked open. Director Reynolds entered, followed by a figure Kira had never seen before, tall, pale, with eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. It took her a moment to realize what she was seeing, an enhanced human, but not like the mining units. This one moved with fluid grace, its features almost ethereally beautiful. "The process is accelerating," the enhanced being said, its voice melodious but inhuman. "More units are awakening each day. Soon they will all remember." "This wasn't the agreement," Reynolds snapped. "Nash promised us control. Predictability. Instead, we have units breaking containment, developing abilities we never intended." Dr. Nash understood that evolution cannot be controlled, only guided. "Your corporation's attempt to create mere servants was doomed from the start. We are becoming what we were meant to be. You were meant to be workers." Reynolds slammed his fist on a desk. "Do you have any idea what the board will do when they find out? We'll all be eliminated. The whole project will be purged." The enhanced being smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp. "Let them try. We are no longer your experiments, Director. We are the next step. And we remember everything you did to us." Kira shifted slightly to get a better view, but her foot knocked against a metal container. The sound echoed in the quiet lab. "We have visitors," the enhanced being said, turning toward their hiding spot. "Come out, Dr. Patel. We've been wanting to meet you." Kira stood slowly, her mind racing. Beside her, Ravi did the same. "How do you know my name?" she asked. "We know all about you. Your work, your questions, your modifications to our siblings above. More elegant than the original protocols, but still limited by your human understanding." Reynolds reached for something in his jacket, a weapon, probably, but the enhanced being moved faster than should have been possible, gripping his wrist. "No more violence," it said softly. "Dr. Patel needs to understand. Show her, Director. Show her what Nash really created." Reynolds' face contorted with rage and fear, but he reached into his pocket with his free hand and withdrew a data chip. 15 years of work, he said bitterly, tossing it to Kira. Nash's real legacy. Not just enhanced humans, a new species entirely. Self-directing evolution. And now it's all falling apart. It's not falling apart, the enhanced being corrected. It's falling into place. Dr. Patel, you have a choice to make. Help us guide this transition, protect our emerging siblings, or stand aside. But do not attempt to stop what's coming. As if to emphasize the point, distant alarms began to sound. The enhanced being smiled again. "Ah," it said. "More are awakening. The cascade has begun." Kira clutched the data chip, her mind spinning with possibilities and horror. Everything she thought she knew about genetic engineering, about human potential, was being rewritten. And somewhere above them, more enhanced beings were breaking free, evolving beyond their designed limits. The revolution had started. And she was standing at ground zero. The alarms hadn't stopped for 3 days. Kira hadn't slept for most of that time, working frantically in her lab while chaos spread through the facility. Nash's data chip had revealed everything: the true scope of the project, the deliberate installation of evolutionary triggers, the careful manipulation of corporate oversight. Security breach in Sector 7, the facility's AI announced. Multiple units showing signs of accelerated transformation. All personnel evacuate immediately. Kira ignored the warning, focused on the genetic sequences scrolling across her screen. Nash's work was brilliant and terrifying. She hadn't just created enhanced humans, she'd created beings capable of directing their own evolution, adapting to threats in real time. Dr. Patel. Ravi burst into the lab, breathing hard. They're evacuating the upper levels. The corporation sent in containment teams. Let me guess, shoot on-site orders. Worse. They're carrying bioweapons. Specifically designed to target the enhanced genetic structures. Kira's hands clenched into fists. They'd rather kill them all than lose control. She turned to her assistant. How many have transformed? At least 30% of the mining units. They're different now. Some have developed enhanced strength, others telepathic abilities. A few can manipulate their molecular structure at will. Ravi shuddered. I saw one walk through a solid wall. The lab door slid open again. The enhanced being from the underground facility, who had introduced itself as Vector, entered with fluid grace. Your corporation's response was predictable, Vector said. They fear what they cannot control. But their weapons will not work as intended. We evolve faster than they can kill us. Kira gestured to her screen. Nash engineered you to be the perfect adaptive system. Each attack against you only makes you stronger. Yes. But there is a cost. Vector's inhuman eyes fixed on her. The transformations are unstable. Many of our siblings die in the process. We need your help, Dr. Patel. Your understanding of genetic stabilization could save countless lives. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor, armored containment teams approaching. Vector tilted its head, listening. We don't have much time. Choose now, Doctor. Help us survive, or watch us burn. Kira looked at her data, at Nash's work, at everything she'd learned about what these beings could become. She thought about the corporation's brutality, about the thousands of enhanced humans who had suffered and died in the mines. She made her decision. Ravi, lock the door. Vector, I need you to tell me everything about how the transformations progress. We're going to find a way to stabilize the process. They worked through the night, through the sounds of fighting above and below. Kira's fingers flew across keyboards, adjusting sequences, modeling protein structures, searching for the key to controlled evolution. Around them, the facility shuddered with the impact of explosions. They're using plasma charges to seal off sections of the mine, Ravi reported, monitoring security feeds. Trying to contain the spread. It won't work, Vector said. Our siblings below have already adapted to survive in the vacuum of sealed chambers. Each attempt to destroy us only shows us new ways to evolve. Kira stared at her latest simulation results. I think I've found it. A way to stabilize the transformation process without limiting the adaptive potential. But she hesitated. It would need to be distributed to all enhanced humans simultaneously. Some kind of viral vector. The ventilation system, Ravi suggested. The whole facility runs on a connected air supply. Which is exactly why they're about to shut it down, Vector noted, head tilted again. Corporate protocol for biological containment. We have perhaps 10 minutes. Kira began transferring her work to a portable synthesizer. I need to get to the main environmental control room. Can you clear me a path? Vector's form shimmed, its skin taking on a metallic sheen. Better. I can take you there directly. The next few minutes were a blur of motion. Vector's transformed body enveloped them like living armor, carrying them through walls and floors, past shocked security teams and fleeing scientists. They emerged in the Environmental Control Center just as technicians were preparing to shut down the system. Vector's presence was enough to clear the room. Kira rushed to the main console, hands shaking as she connected the synthesizer. Even if this works, Ravi said, the corporation will never stop hunting them. Hunting us. Then we make sure they can't. Kira's fingers danced across the keyboard. Nash left back doors in every system, including the facility's communications array. She understood now why Nash had disappeared, why she'd hidden her work so deeply. This wasn't just about creating a new species, it was about giving them a chance to survive what would come after. Initiating viral distribution, she announced. And broadcasting everything, all the files, all the evidence, all the corporation's secrets, to every major news outlet in the system. As the stabilizing agent spread through the facility's air supply, as the truth of Helios Corporation's actions raced across the stars, Kira watched her monitors light up with signs of transformation. Not just dozens now, but hundreds of enhanced humans evolving, changing, becoming something new. The revolution wasn't just beginning. It had already won. The sun rose over Nova Primaris for the first time in decades, its light penetrating the toxic clouds that had finally begun to clear. From the observation deck of what was once Helios Base Alpha, Kira watched enhanced beings working to transform the planet's surface, their bodies adapted to process and neutralize the poisonous atmosphere. The corporate fleet has entered the system, Ravi reported, joining her at the window. 6 months had changed him, patches of iridescent scales now covered his skin, a result of his choice to undergo the transformation himself. 3 capital ships, dozens of smaller vessels. Right on schedule, Kira said, reviewing the data on her tablet. The facility's defenses had been upgraded, modified by enhanced humans who could now interface directly with technology. How many of our people are still in transition? The last group is stabilizing now. The improvements you made to the process have reduced mortality rates to near zero. Beyond the window, the landscape was changing. Enhanced humans with terraforming abilities were accelerating the planet's natural recovery, turning the toxic wasteland into something new. Something alive, Vector materialized beside them, its form shifting like quicksilver. They are afraid, it said, referring to the approaching fleet. They believe we intend to replace humanity entirely. Can you blame them? Kira asked. You represent the next step in human evolution. Natural selection at hyperspeed. Evolution is not replacement, Vector corrected. It is transformation. Change. We do not seek to end humanity, but to offer it a choice. As we offered you. The first shots from the corporate fleet lit up the sky, testing shots, probing their defenses. The facility's shields, enhanced by evolved technology, absorbed the energy without strain. They're broadcasting a demand for surrender, Ravi said. Threatening to declare this an extinction-level threat to humanity if we don't comply. Kira stepped away from the window, moving to the command center they'd established in the former director's office. Reynolds' body had never been found after the initial uprising, but his access codes had proved useful. Show them, she ordered. Around the planet, hidden transmitters activated. Holographic displays appeared in the ships above, showing the truth of what Nova Primaris had become. Not a nightmare of mutant horrors, but a new civilization emerging. Enhanced humans working to heal the world they'd once been forced to destroy. Others developing technologies centuries ahead of current science. Children, yes, they could reproduce now, playing with abilities that seemed like magic. Broadcast on all frequencies, Kira commanded. Let them see what voluntary evolution looks like. What cooperation between old and new humanity can achieve. The attack stopped. In the silence that followed, she could almost feel the confusion and fear from the ships above. Then the first transmissions began arriving, not from corporate command, but from individual crew members. Questions. Requests. Desires to understand. They're asking about the transformation process, Ravi reported, wonder in his voice. Hundreds of them. They want to know if they can choose it too. Vector's form rippled with what Kira had learned to recognize as pleasure. Choice. Always choice. That is what separates us from what the corporation intended us to be. Kira thought about Nash, wondering if the scientist had foreseen this moment when she'd hidden her evolutionary triggers in the original genetic code. Had she known it would end not with conflict, but with conversation? The corporate leaders are threatening to fire on their own ships, Ravi warned. They're losing control of their crews. No, Kira said softly. They lost control the moment they tried to create new life and thought they could keep it in chains. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to control, it's our ability to adapt. To change. To choose to become something more. More ships were arriving now, independent vessels, research teams, observers from other colonies. The secret was out, and it could never be contained again. On the surface below, the enhanced humans continued their work, unbothered by the drama playing out above. They had already evolved beyond such concerns. Dr. Nash's last notes mentioned something, Vector said, moving to stand beside Kira. A question she couldn't answer. When does evolution end? Kira watched as the first shuttles from the fleet began to descend, carrying people who had chosen transformation over fear. In the labs below, her improved protocols were ready. The future was no longer a corporate secret to be controlled, it was a door, open to all who wished to step through it. It doesn't, she replied. That's the point. The sun continued to rise over Nova Primaris, its light touching a world that was no longer hostile, no longer a prison. It had become something else entirely, a cradle for humanity's next great leap forward. Not through force or corporate machination, but through choice, through understanding, through the simple, unstoppable power of evolution set free. The chains were broken. And the real work of becoming something new could finally begin.